Hey YouTube, this is Mad Movie Mark with another Mad Movie Mark movie review, counting down my top 10 favorite movies of all time. We have made it to number 2, which is going to be Frank Capra's 1946 masterpiece, It's a Wonderful Life. So let me go ahead and recap what we have already done. Number 10 was Magnolia. Number 9 was Amadeus. Number 8 was Memento. Number 7, Paths of Glory. Number 6 was The Jerk. Number 5 was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Number 4 was Singing in the Rain. Number 3 was Ordinary People. And now number 2 is It's a Wonderful Life. This movie stars James Stewart, Donna Reed, and Henry Travers. James Stewart is my favorite actor of all time. He has a robust 9 movies that are rated 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is not one of them. This just narrowly missed out at 94%. Um, he was nominated for Best Actor in this movie. It was also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Frank Capra, Best Sound Editing, and Best Film Editing, and that was it. Best Director. That's all I was going to say. So the winner of most of the awards for that year, at least the major awards, was the movie The Best Years of Our Lives, which I have never seen, so I can't really compare it to anything. I personally believe that Donna Reed and James Stewart deserved wins for this. I think that Donna Reed, at least if nothing else, deserved a nomination. She would later go on to win Best Actress for From Here to Eternity, so they both won one Oscar in their lifetime. James Stewart won in the 1940 for the Philadelphia Story. There's a large gap between 1940 and 1946 between these two movies. That is because for about 5 years, James Stewart fought in World War II. He was an air pilot. So this It's a Wonderful Life is his first movie back from World War II, and I think he just does a great job with it. He was also nominated in 1939 for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and that was a star-studded year for movies. Best Movie, The Wizard of Oz was nominated for Best Movie. Gone with the Wind was nominated. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was nominated. And then for Best Actor that year, Clark Gable was nominated for Gone with the Wind. Laurence Olivier for Worthington Heights. I believe that's what it's called. And then James Stewart for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And then, of course, the winner that year, he needs no introduction. He won Best Actor, so obviously he is the cream of the crop. When it comes to 1939, that was Robert Donat for Goodbye, Mr. Chips. The legendary acting performance, the legendary movie. I've never heard of it, but sometimes Oscars go to people who are not the most deserving. I don't know if that's true because I haven't seen his performance in it, but oh man, it's really hard to deny Clark Gable, Laurence Olivier, and James Stewart. Wow, that is a quite a group of people to be nominated. Um, but James Stewart won one Oscar in his lifetime, which I don't understand either. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of actors throughout the years. Robert Mitchum never won a Best Actor award, I mean, but you have to wonder when people have throw together such an array, such a long history of perfect acting in movies, just what happens. I don't know. So I will admit that when I first saw this movie, I was very young, and I absolutely hated it for a very long time. I thought that It's a Wonderful Life was boring back in the day. I thought it was long. I preferred hijink movies such as Home Alone when it came to Christmas movies. Could not really keep the attention span I needed to watch It's a Wonderful Life. It always came on TV. There was always commercials in between, and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't until I became a teenager that I really started watching James Stewart movies. I believe it actually all started when I watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington one day and thought it was fantastic. I then went to Vertigo. I went to Rear Window, Who Shot Liberty Valance, A Anatomy of a Murder. Harvey is one of my favorite James Stewart movies of all time. Also, nearly made my top 10 list. Crazy Enough, Philadelphia, which he won his the Philadelphia Story, which he won his Oscar for, is one of my least favorite James Stewart movies. It's a star-studded movie. I'm just not a huge fan of it. But so I thought that since I was on this James Stewart kick, that I would love it. Maybe that I could have a new um, appreciation for It's a Wonderful Life. So I rewatched it, and wow, I was wrong when I was young. This is a fantastic movie. Um, so essentially, it's about a young boy named George who he grows up and he saves. Early on in the movie, he saves his brother's life. His brother is sledding and falls through the ice, and George jumps in and saves him. As they're growing up, George also falls, or a girl falls for George. His name is Mary. Her name is Mary. Sorry. She pretty much falls in love with him right at the beginning of the movie and says she's going to love him for the rest of his life. Already, I love this because I love stories and movies, especially if it works out and everything's fine. So as George grows older, he decides that he wants to be a sort of an architect. He wants to travel the world, build things, do exciting things. His brother becomes like a sports football star, and their dad owns a building and loan, which is a company that essentially helps people who can't afford houses get houses. Until 2008, what was the problem with that, right? But he's helping the town. There's all these people who, later on in the movie, there's a bank run, and this lady says, "My husband hasn't worked in over a year, and I can't afford things. I need my money," and she has a house through the building alone. So as I'm watching it, as I'm older now, I'm like, oh, yikes, because how is this? How is this possible? How is this a good thing? But these people love George and they love what he's doing. There is a villain in the movie named Mr. Potter, who is played by Lionel Barrymore. He is kind of the guy in the town who owns everything. He is the largest shareholder of the building and loan. He kind of pushes people around. He doesn't take anything from anyone. If anyone's late on their payments, he forecloses on them. And he basically is hated by everyone because people who can't afford houses want them, and he won't let them have them. So I'm probably being too harsh here, but you have to understand my parents lost their house in 2008. It was a very hard time for us, and they also could not afford their house really. It was they got into this upside down loan type thing, and it was so when I'm watching this movie as an adult, I'm like, there's a lot of red flags here when it comes to what's going on with this building and loan. Like maybe these people, um, maybe they don't have houses because I mean a house is not something that's guaranteed to you. It's you can live in an apartment or something. But anyway, I digress. As George is going away to be an architect, and as his brother is going away to be a sports star, their father tragically has a stroke and passes away. George kind of stays around and cleans things up with the company, makes sure things are running well. And then his passion, what he wants to do is leave the company in charge of someone to run it. Mr. Potter, who is the biggest shareholder in the company, believes that the company is not being run efficiently and that it's not making money, and that it's in the best interest if it just kind of liquidates and he takes it over. George Bailey, which is James Stewart, gives a fantastic speech about how Mr. Potter owns everything and he just wants to get his hands on this building and loan so that he can control everyone in the town and he can charge whatever rent he wants, and he can foreclose on everyone, and people who have worked their entire lives All they want's a house. They want a nice home to come to, and he's going to make sure that doesn't happen. So the board of directors basically cheers James Stewart. Yeah, that's what we want to hear. And then they only agree to continue with the building alone and not sell it to Potter if George Bailey takes it over, which he doesn't want to do because he feels like he's going to be just living a dull, boring life that's meaningless. And he's never going to be able to travel and live and do what he wants. But he agrees to do it because it's in the best interest of the town and the people who live there. He ends up getting married to Donna Reed's character. They have like 4 children. Um, and he's just kind of going through life. And then one day, his friend who works at the bank misplaces a check that Potter ends up coming across. The bank examiner comes by to kind of check the books and realizes there's money missing. And they're all in a lot of trouble because it's a misappropriation of funds, basically, and they're all facing jail time. James Stewart basically goes off the rails at this point. He doesn't know what to do. He feels trapped in his life. He feels like he never was able to do what he wanted. He now has the law after him. His children basically annoy him. So he like decides he's going to commit suicide and jump off a bridge. Clarence, at this point, who is his guardian angel, comes to Earth and shows him what life would be like if he never lived. Um, Kind of shows him how the town is falling under Potter's grasp. A lot of his friends who are well off while he's alive are no longer well off. The town as a whole kind of becomes more modern. There's more like showgirl things. There's more like gambling things. It's not like the old town that they were accustomed to before. So it's kind of like a Back to the Future 2 situation where Biff is the president and he basically changes the town. Only I would say that in this movie it's not as drastic and it's not as terrible. Um, so he realizes that he made a lot of difference in these people's lives, that he made their lives better, that he actually did not lead a meaningless life, that there was a lot of purpose to his life, even if he didn't necessarily accomplish what he wanted to exactly. He has done a lot of good and people love him. So at the end of the movie, everyone kind of donates a bunch of money to him to help pay the $8,000 that he had lost. And everything is tied up in a nice, neat package, basically. Um, I love this movie. I think the acting is fantastic. I have yet to see a James Stewart movie where he's not great, and a lot of times it's because he's grandstanding and he's like giving these like speeches where he's pounding the desk. My cat's just got frightened by that. He's pounding the desk and he's like, hey, and he's like the everyman type of person. He's like the defender and the fighter of the people in every movie that he's in. Um, he does a great job of it. Donna Reed is really good in this movie also. She plays a nice I don't know. She does a very good job at what she's doing. She loves George. She is by his side. He is by even when he is not necessarily the easiest person to come home to. She kind of understands what's going on. She kind of you can tell she really loves George unconditionally throughout the entire movie. I love when there's a love story from like early, like young childhood, and it lasts through the end of the movie. I think that makes a stronger case for a love story. I love it. And Mr. Potter, I thought was great in this movie, as well as Clarence. The acting's phenomenal. It's a classic, and I also I don't want to say this because, but Mr. Potter, he was an evil person who did not care about people, but I think a lot of the things he said financially might have been correct. Um, that the people who could not afford the homes probably should not have been in the homes. Uh, he could have given them a longer leash when it came to things to, especially since they were just coming out of the Great Depression. Um, but it's also hard on the people who own the company. Like right now, for instance, people think that there should be a rent moratorium when it comes to apartments, but people own those apartment complexes and they're not getting paid any money, and yet they have to still put out money. Yes, it's hard on the people who need to rent the apartment, especially if you don't have a job and you don't have income coming in. But the people who own those buildings also need to be able to pay for them. They're not free. So I think he had an argument in this movie that maybe wasn't necessarily seen, um, maybe more so since 2008. It's people can understand it better. Uh, I think there's a lot of layers to this movie. I don't know if they were trying to make a message about this in that movie, but there's a lot of layers to this movie. The acting is great. It's a holiday classic, and that is my review. This is another 10 out of 10 for me. Heads up, my number one favorite movie of all time might not be a 10 out of 10, but this is a 10 out of 10 for me. It is just fantastic. I love everything about it. So join me next week or whenever I come back to do this. I'm currently studying for my Series 7 test and my SIE and my Series 63 for work. So, and then I will be going back to school in 3 weeks. So I might not be doing 3 or 4 reviews a week like I have been, but I will still do them somewhat regularly, at least one a week. So when I come back, we will do my number one favorite movie of all time. So tune in for that. Thank you. Have a great day.